Hello, my name is Kristen Marie, and I am honored to be with you today. First of all, I'd love to thank Christina. Christina, you know how much you mean to me, how much I respect you and appreciate you. You have such a servant's heart, and it is a joy to learn from you and all that you share with us and encouraging us and inspiring us to say yes in our stories. And so I love you, but thank you. It's an honor that you chose to be a part of your summit. I'm happy to share with your guests a little bit about what's all on our hearts, just to align myself with them and agree with them as I'm right there with them as we're stepping into this new thing. And so I just want to connect again that the topic is pivoting towards our best selves. And that is my heart, that is my passion, is integration of our spirit, soul, body, which that true integration of a person's spirit, soul, body, then they have that full transformation and then reformation. We see our worlds, whether in our home and in our neighborhood, in our community, in our work, our worlds around us reform. So that reformation that we all would love to see, of course, for the glory and goodness of God. So again, I'm right there with all of you. I'm right there with you as far as what's next, what's to come. And I'm also seeking answers as far as on the macro level. Lord, what are you doing? What are you saying? And then the meso level in my city, in my community, in my neighborhood, but even on a micro level for my story, for my husband's story, for our children, for our extended family. And so I'm right there with you and pivoting towards our best self. And so I'll talk a little bit more about this season that we've been into, this unforgettable, unprecedented season that I have 3 girls. I've been married for 15 years, and my 3 girls will never forget the season, even though all 3 of them are in grade school. So they're young, but it marked them. And so I feel like no matter who you are or where you live, that you will have known there was something that happened spring of 2020, however you define it, that something happened. And so the shift, suddenly a shaking, a rest, a reset, that something happened. And so they are marked, and we have been in conversation with them of pivoting them even in their young years towards their best self too. And so again, I want to say, Christina, I appreciate your work and how your message of peace and abundance and holiness, of encouraging, empowering all of us to say yes. And that is a big part of what I want to offer today, is how we can all say yes. A big part of what I do is helping people practically choose life in their spirit, choose life in their soul, choose life in their body, and saying yes to our best self, and in a new season, aligning with God and this new thing He's doing, no matter what season, but especially now, is very important. I will say that I did a YouTube video at the beginning of the year, and it's funny, somebody just sent it to me recently, about 2 days ago. Somebody sent the video and said, I just came across your YouTube video that you did. It's called Happy New Year. So it's the beginning of the year. And these are some of the things I was saying. I was sharing about the new era that we are in, and specifically even from Rosh Hashanah back in September, when Rosh Hashanah hit, and we're in this new decade, 5780. And then, of course, in this new decade, 2020. But I talked about the new era that we're in, and I talked about that God is doing a new thing. And I shared Isaiah 43:19, that, hey, He's doing a new thing. Don't you see it? It springs up from the ground. And so just stirring the excitement and the pleasure of that. And I shared in that video how what He's doing in this new season, this new thing, it's not going to be anything we've seen before. I shared that in video. I said, but he's creating these new containers in us, a new increased capacity that, and in this increased capacity, we will, this is important, unapologetically display His glory, His goodness, His splendor. And I said, now listen, this new thing that He's doing is going to look radical. And I chuckled a little bit and I said, it's going to look beautifully radical, but it will look radical. It'll look like nothing we've ever seen and we could not ever imagine. And then I compared it in the video. It would be like the Israelites as they were in the place of trouble and fear, that the Lord provided a way. There was a dry ground in the midst of parting the Red Sea. And so the parting the sea was one thing, but to think that there would be dry ground for them to walk across with such ease, with such grace, and the way that he is such a beautiful God that to provide and take care of his people. And so I shared that in the Happy New Year video, and the YouTube page. I don't do many videos, but it's Choose Life with Kristen. I also have it on my Facebook, Choose Life with Kristen Marie page. So you can go see that. It's about 4 minutes long, real short. But I want to say, for me, how this all played out on a personal level, back to the micro level, that I entered Lent. I love Lent. It's one of my favorite seasons. And I know there's a lot of churches that enter, or even people, macro, meso, micro, right? There's all those storylines always going on. Enter the first of the year, and they may do this for 21 days or do this for 5 days in January. But I look forward to Lent. And I may start the year in a consecrated way, but absolutely Lent is one of my favorite seasons of each year. And I had already determined in my heart it was going to look different. I had, usually for Lent, I am fasting from some type of food. It could be absolute fast from sugar or carbs, or some type of food. And I have done Daniel fast during that time, and I have even embarked on an absolute fast with just water before. And so just really, I love what happens in the spirit level, soul level, and body level, and all components when a person fasts. But this is not a fasting talk, so I'm not going to go into all those details, but and those type of fasts. But specifically this year, I didn't think it was going to involve food per se, as far as fasting from abstaining from something during Lent. I felt like it would be taking communion. And I have taken, and will take communion and just pull grape juice and pull a little piece of bread and just consecrate that moment, and remembering Jesus, of who he is and what he's done and what his blood and body has to offer. And it's a sacrament, and esteeming and revering him and the sacrament that this moment is. But I thought, I'm going to do it 3 times a day. So, and usually I will say I do it on my own, meaning my husband doesn't usually join in, my family doesn't usually join in. It's just something in my secret place, in my quiet time moment with God, that I'll take communion. And so I began Lent, and I decided 3 times a day, and this time with each day, I'm going to play a different worship song. And it's a song with much passion and affection and respect to him. And so much, encouraging much love and appreciation and adoration of him. And so that's where I began with Lent, doing that. So Ash Wednesday came, I guess, that last Wednesday of February. And then, of course, by March 11th, which happened to be right after Purim, and when Israel was celebrating Purim, immediately after that is when things started to be in quarantine and lockdown. Is interesting timing. And then, of course, there's a lot of conversations, but in a nutshell, a shaking. And some people called it a global Sabbath because people were off. They were off work, they were out of school, they were out of their meetings or their fellowship. And so there was a strong pause, and nobody, at first we thought it'd blow over in about a week, in about 10 days, but as different reports were coming in, there was just more shutdown of more organizations and activities, and more parameters set in place. And it's so interesting, as I'm going through Lent, and as Lent is coming to a close, and just that precious season that it is, taking communion 3 times a day, here family members are then joining in, and in the communion, my husband and my children, and there's just this precious reverence and respect for, of course, the blood and the covering of the blood. There's more conversations, of course, of Passover, because this is a collision of Easter and Passover. Sometimes they don't always cross, but here they're crossing this year. And I saw on social media that there was blood, maybe red drapes are set on posts, and they're really asking, and people seeing them desperately asking, requesting that the Lord pass over them, and that they may not be sick, then there would be no disease, but full of health and alive. And so it was beautiful to see this common theme globally, and how as I'm finishing up this Lent consecration, this communion 3 times a day, I'm then appearing on social media, and I'm seeing these global communion, organization after organization, and some were linking up together, but really by the hundreds, thousands of people are then taking communion all together. So it's so interesting to see the calibration, not just on a micro level in homes, families coming together, but on of course, a meso level, neighborhoods, communities, groups, fellowships, churches, but even of course on a macro level, on the globally, and how the Passover, we've never experienced a Passover like the original Passover, but this one was it, as they were confined in their homes, and here we're confined in their homes, and there was an honoring of the blood and body in a way that maybe most families and most people don't even consider it, but yet they were taking it and pulling aside and clinging to the power of the Jesus's body and blood. And so I was, the walls were coming down as things that would normally separate people. Instead, there was a beautiful convergence. And I just want to say, yes, there was a lot of trauma happening, but I wanted to just, in my time with you, just to highlight the fruitfulness of what was happening during this pandemic, during this unforgettable, unprecedented season that caused the shift, that caused the global shift that we're now experiencing. So I call this time, this season, Ready, Reset, Go. And so of course there's a global rest, perhaps a divine rest, and a global reset, perhaps a divine reset. And that's one of the Choose Life choices I want to recommend to you, was what are you supposed to reset? In my YouTube video that I did at the first of the year, the Happy New Year YouTube video, that I talk about, my Choose Life choice that I'm recommending for you is to sit with the Lord. And I shared how I usually have goals and agendas, and here I come, this is the year, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it was different. Instead, I had open hands and a pure heart before the Lord, and I was saying, God, in my time with Him, I was just presenting myself, saying, what do you want? What is on your heart? What is on your agenda? And just sitting and pausing and really allowing me to hear the Holy Spirit and jotting down what I feel like He's saying, and doing that several times. And so yes, that was my Choose Life choice at the beginning of the year, but absolutely that is what I'm recommending right now in this hour. And we're just days or less than 3 weeks away, or a couple of weeks away, to Pentecost Sunday, and there's a lot of the fullness and unleashing of the Lord that happened on Pentecost Sunday, 50 days after Jesus had resurrected. And so I want to say, or went to ascended to heaven, I want to say that this is a great time. We're still in the ready, reset, go. What is the Lord asking you to reset? Sometimes it has been relationships and dynamics. I've had personal conversations with people. It's a reset to people's marriages, a reset to people's families, a reset with a whole new identity. And I want to speak a little bit about that and encourage you that God brought people in like caterpillars, if you will, in this cocoon time, in this time that He has given a grace for resetting and coming perhaps in like a caterpillar, and you may leave with an entirely different identity. You may leave with butterflies don't look like caterpillars, so you may leave more colorful, more alive, more vibrant, in a place where you're soaring, in a place where you're in above, versus going slow through things where you are flying. You are literally flying. And so in an accelerated way, which is your true identity. Caterpillars were made for the cocoon time and in order to become a butterfly. And so perhaps that is, if there is a new look, God is for sure doing a new thing. And if that new thing is a new identity, if you will, I want to just encourage you to lean into it. It's the choose life choice to say yes. And again, I love that Christina encourages her audience to say yes to holiness. And that is a yes that you can say, because that does idea, that beautiful, wonderful, holy, all good, James 1:17 says, all good things come from above. That holy idea is for something to not be scared of, but instead lean into this reset and say yes and align with it, and perhaps become something altogether new. So yes, so sit with him as we have just days left in this season. And I mean days, there's of course some things will take a while to roll out. I'm not saying everything's going to be back with Pentecost Sunday, but as far as on a spiritual component, on a spiritual level, I do feel like there's a grace of what is God asking you to reset. And I want to encourage you, just sit with him. And that's the choose life choice, and asking him what his agenda is with story on a micro. You can of course ask for a macro and in a meso, and how that will connect as far as your micro story in those areas. And I believe that God will bring revelation. I do believe more revelation is happening to those who are asking. I feel that, I see that in conversations already. And so of course I encourage that to you today. And so one of the verses that, as I was thinking about my conversation with you, and just really praying and saying, God, what would you like for me to share? Of course, he highlighted the text of how much my New Year, Happy New Year video had impacted this person. Just highlighted that. It was 2 days ago. But then also, he highlighted a verse in Romans 8. And this verse is talking about how all creation has been moaning and groaning for God's sons and daughters to be revealed. And I really feel like now is the time. Now is the time to unapologetically display God's glory, goodness, and splendor. And it may look radical in your micro, meso story. We've seen radical that you could never think, ask, or imagine on a macro level. But for you, I want to encourage you that there is a grace for you, and there is an empowering for you, but it is your response. It is your response to say yes. But I do encourage you, not only saying yes to holiness, but choosing life today and saying just yes to the new thing that God is doing in your story. So choose life today, because now is the time.